Hello, everyone. This is Ryan from the Gecko Talk podcast, and today we're doing a round table. I'm joined by Bubba's Geckos and George from Golden Valley Reptiles. So, yeah, welcome.
What's up, man?
So, today we're going to be talking about the overall reptile bans that have been going on just around the states, like California, everywhere where it's just been popping up, Miami, all of that. So yeah.
Well, if the bans are, it's from people who don't understand. If you saw, Enzo's podcast, when he had Matt on and they were kind of just conversation, Matt actually worked for some, private sectors and, zoos and stuff, and he was saying the knowledge that they have is maybe about 10 or so years, and that private collectors and stuff, when we specialize in leopard geckos, we probably know more than the average person at a zoo about that specific species because we're hands-on every single day, as to where they have a general knowledge of all those animals instead of just a specific kind of genus even. So you kind of have to think about that. They're coming from a place of they don't understand. They're doing this because, oh my gosh, something got out and it can breed in these conditions. Like Florida is just always going to be that. So doing that ban kind of doesn't make sense because it's going to happen either way. It's already happening. I understand having stricter enforcements, but having people lose their livelihoods over a ban like that is kind of, I don't know, uncalled for, I think, and that's why kind of supporting you as the ARC and making sure we have a voice is very important and crucial moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like you were mentioning, David, they're the professionals, they know what they study, because us that we keep just leopard geckos, they study in general a lot of these species that are getting banned, and that's good that we have to, as a reptile in general community, we have to support the use of the experts, because maybe we're not the experts in riptics or other kind of snakes and stuff like that, but these guys are, and they know what's going on. They know, they know their facts, their studies and stuff like that, where they can back it up. Like you were mentioning, most of these studies have been 10 years old now or plus, where they don't know the conditions of what can breed and what not can breed, and that kind of affects the hobbyists like ourselves. We want to keep some of the species, but then we're getting, locked down by that because the bans are happening. And these bans have been going on for years now. It's not the first time, but now it's bigger because, we have to be a voice, we have to step in, whether it's donating, educating, all that, especially educating, that's the our priority, because, the more people know, the more they, they're going to back us up in a way. Especially for us hobbyists in the hobby, and this is in general, not just leopard geckos. We mostly focus on leopard geckos, but we also love reptiles, in general, and that's the reason why we do this.
Yeah,
100%. It's from passion. We're not keeping these animals because they make us money, and we're not keeping them in subpar conditions to basically just be a money grab. We do this because we kind of want to benefit the hobby as a whole. And for people not understanding, let's use something that maybe is a little bit more easy to swallow and more palatable. Same thing, the government just kind of is legalizing all these drugs. Why? Because there's going to be drugs. It's always going to be either illegal activity that's frowned upon, that's going to have all these laws and slaps on the wrist when you get caught with them. But when they free it, then it becomes acceptable, kind of you can use it correctly, medicinal marijuana. That's a good one too, because that's actually beneficial for people. And then why ride that line if you're going to kind of encompass all drugs and ban it? It's going to be a supply. So if they ban all reptiles, there's going to be smugglers and people wheeling in and still doing it, and then it's not going to get rid of it. It's just going to make things harder for us.
Oh yeah, but
and actually, David, my bad, Ryan, but that's happening right now, anyways. You know, there's people that bring in illegal exports and imports. You know, like that happens no matter what. You know, like especially with the turtle trade. You know, that's huge. You know, like we don't see it here in the States, but like in like Asia. You know, like the whole turtle stuff, and I think Madagascar as well. You know, stuff like. They have all kinds of different, like, you know, like smugglers and stuff like that. So that's going to happen regardless as well.
Yeah, it's really easy, or not easy, I should say, because like people are of course are getting caught. But like I guess most known, like people coming from Australia trying to sneak stuff out of there. Like there's so many people. I read this thing like maybe 3 months ago. Some lady from like South Korea was like trying to hoard like 50 baby shingleback skinks in her suitcase, trying to like smuggle them out. They stopped her. They were all dead, even worse. Because, like, they're only in Australia. Like, so there's some here, but, like, very, very extremely rare, no matter what. But, like, the smuggling as far as just, like, people constantly try to take stuff that's, like, important is it's, like, kind of at a peak right now, too. Like, not only, like, from Australia, there's, like, stuff from Iran and Iraq. Like, I was just talking to a friend yesterday about... he heard like, one of his buddies was talking about a guy that went down into Pakistan and, like, brought up a few, or not Pakistan, sorry, Turkey, went through Turkey and pulled up some, Angramanu and just drove past, and he's got them through somehow, and now he has, like, wild-caught Angramanu. It's just super easy.
There needs to be regulations on that, for sure, but, like, I mean... in our continent, too, like, this is a big thing. Like, I work with a Bronya, and it's so easy to just shoot that across from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's always going to be an issue. And banning what we're doing it doesn't make sense, because that's what they have in mind. They're like, oh, they're getting these animals from the wild, they're bringing in invasive species. And no, these are indicated for about 20 years now. These are the animals that we're working with, specifically leopard geckos, but most of the stuff in the hobby has been established. And yeah, if it gets out, it's going to wreck the ecosystem, which is why we kind of support proper husbandry and like the keeping of reptiles. So it's, I don't know, it's like a hit or miss, but it's always going to be an issue. So slapping bans on it, I don't think that's the fix.
And like you were saying, David, about the proper husbandry and all that, I think for us as the, I guess you will say professional or the expert, right? We should educate more, you know, that way there's no loss like that, you know, that way people actually open their eyes and be like, oh, well, they're, you know, they've been here for a long time. They can be kept properly. There is responsible people here. There is people that love them, you know, people that keep them as pets and not just throw them out in, you know, in the wild, or, you know what I mean? Just to be invasive, you know, and that's something that we have to kind of speak on, that there's many of us that do this for the love of it, not just, you know, like you were mentioning, for money, you know, and that's where the whole education part comes in, to make sure we're educating as well as, you know, having people open their eyes and about this situation.
Yeah, just minded though too.
They stay quiet. Yeah, and there's a lot of hobbies that stay quiet.
So like we should kind of look at this as like at a governmental aspect, like how is it affecting us? What the government's trying to, I guess, press against us with banning stuff.
I think they're always like trying to stick a hand in our pockets, but like they'll soon find out that there's maybe a gum wrapper and like a ball of lint in my pockets. So, I mean, like, what they're doing too is, if they're going to ban everything, it's going to become illegal activity, and then they're not going to be able to tax it. It's going to be even more lucrative than initially they thought it out to be. And it's basically gonna backfire. They're trying to retake a look at the Lacey Act, and what that's gonna pretty much do, if they reverse it, is close off every single state. So no in, no outs. Like, you can't bring animals across state borders. And if they do that, then, like, this is very unconstitutional. Like, come try to take my animals. Like, it's not going to happen.
And then at the end of the day, the United States is one of the powerhouse of conservation as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many zoological places here that focus on conservation? Although the species we work with is not endangered, you know, because there's plenty of it, but, like, there's other people that do have endangered species, and they work highly with them, you know, and that affects them the most, you know, because, I mean, the species are probably not even in the wild anymore, and they have it here in the United States, you know, and breeding and being successful, you know, and that's another part that we have to look into, you know, like, on top of having these zoological places, I mean, obviously the zoos are going to have, it's a conservation, but we have a lot of, you know, hobbyists that have that capability of being, you know, in that level of not an official zoological place, but, like, they have the resources of that, you know, where they can have animals as part of conservation.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to be able to do that, though, too. Like with,
you know,
what's it called? Like the day geckos, like the Madagascar day geckos, and you know how, like, they're quote-unquote invasive in, like, Hawaii and stuff like that. But, like, if you look at Madagascar, like, everything's being torn down. Like, they're cutting down all the... And the fact that, like, it found a new place to live, I guess. Like, mostly everything in Hawaii is invasive. It's not native there whatsoever. But,
Well, I think, like, people need to understand the impact invasive species can have, too.
Yeah.
Because nature has a set food chain. And when something gets tossed into the mix, that's going to grab everything and kind of churn it up. And when that happens, like, something's going to move. Things are going to shift. The potential of something to go extinct or become endangered or become less of or more of is very high when you have an invasive species that can take off. With us specifically, and most, like, the breeders out there, we're going for all these combos, these beautiful morphs and phenotypes. And if something like that is to escape, like, tell me how that's supposed to last through the year, being vibrant as hell, where you can see it from across the globe.
Especially in albino.
Yeah, exactly. Like, tangerines, you got the retics, the sun tigers. Tell me how that's supposed to live. Like, and very unlikely.
And then going back to the question, Ryan, and I just feel like the United States is like a power pack in resources. You know, we have the resources here to keep these, you know, conserve these animals here.
And keep them under control, though, too.
Yeah. And, I mean, that goes into more educating the people as well, you know, like making sure they're, you know, not getting a freaking ritic when they never had a snake before, you know what I mean? But, I mean, we have the resources here because, I mean, we live in the United States and we can provide resources for them, not like other countries and stuff like that. That's why I feel like banning it here banning reptiles for a hobbyist will be a bigger impact on the whole world and that are not looking into, you know? Because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that comes exports from the United States to other countries. And it's everything, not just, like, leopard geckos, like, you know, but we always got back to that because that's our little expertise, but we always think, you know, that we have to include everybody else as well, you know. And that was just my point about that, you know, as well as what David mentioned.
Well, like, if the government wanted to help, I don't think this is the way to go about it. Like, what they could do is, like, USR finds breeders of, like, top-notch breeders who are, like, reputable, have this knowledge for their specific, like, genus or whatever they work with, species-wise.
I'm pretty sure that.
Yeah, and, like, come up with regulations that are reasonable, that, like, not all glass tanks, and, like, nothing where, like, you get Karen down the street just yelling into, like, somebody at Petco. I'm talking about, like, very good standards. It's not black and white. It's going to be, like, it's a big kind of, like, knowledge gap that they have to kind of fill in. But if they wanted to help out and, like, keep a lock more on our animals, there's ways to go about it. This just isn't it.
Not just go in there and ban them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, I was trying to think of what I was going to say after you said that. I was just like, Yeah.
doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. It's just very, I think the overall situation, though, is just really, as far as, like, the hobby and stuff, it's kind of hostile, too. Once they're saying, like, they're gonna ban everything, then there's, people that are competitive and stuff like that. Like, there's people that you see in Florida, why they, like, ban the tegus and stuff like that, and, like, people that are fortunate that are able to, like, move out of Florida and just quickly go back and continue breeding, to make, you know, their profit and stuff like that, or work on their genetics. Yeah. But, like, even with, like, different parts, like, we're part of the leopard gecko hobby, but still is, like, reptile hobby in general. Then there's, like, people in ball python. Like, there's still, like, some tariffs in between us. Like, some people disagree with one another. But I think that also plays a part as far as, like, bans. Like, if you see what, like, they're doing in Florida, they're targeting certain species for a reason. Like, all pythons. Like, it doesn't make sense, though, why you would ban all pythons, too. Like, logically speaking. Like, if you look at, like, ball pythons, a ball python's not going to survive in Florida for that long. Maybe, like, about a week before a dog or alligator picks it up. But, like, it's not going to survive. Like, there's videos out there, like, people dropping off their snakes out in the, like, the woods. Like, a ball python, it's not as big as they wanted. They drop it off in the woods and it dies because of ticks and parasites. But, like...
It's just a knowledge gap, though, too. If
yeah.
you even watch fishing game, like the shows where they have fishing game, you'll see that they get a call, like, in Wisconsin, and then somebody has a big Burmese python, and, oh my gosh, it wrapped a child, it can totally eat it, and they go, it's like 4 foot long, and then they throw a blanket over it, and then they have, like, 5 guys, like, jump on this snake to take it out. Yeah. They don't understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Like, there needs to be an improvement if they're going to want to have it say in what we do. They need to at least understand, or else they're just coming from a point of ignorance, and I don't think that's how America should work, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you were talking about Expos. That's a really good point on how that corresponds with, like, the bans and just education as a whole.
Well, yeah, and a bunch of people, like, through COVID, spending a lot of time at home, everybody picked up hobbies, and, like, some people went with plants, some people went with, I don't know, maybe decorating the room and putting up tapestries and such, but, like, some people got their first leopard gecko, bearded dragons, ball pythons, hopefully not those retics like Jorge was talking about. Don't start off like that. Do it smart. There's a lot of information. There's good, reputable sites and information out there. Reach out to a breeder. Like Jorge was talking about these expos, like, now that everything's kicking back off, so many people, I think the one that we're doing in Del Mar, Jorge's actually coming out this month, I think on Sunday, right? Are you still planning on it?
Possibility. We're still in there.
He's like, possibility.
We'll do our best.
Yeah, you might be there, but, like, either way, I have a few breeders at my table. Just, like, we don't have much to sell. I'm trying to will some stuff around, but, like, I want to be able to educate, show people animals, and, like, display stuff, talk about, like, lines, do a bunch of live streams for the people following, like, online, too. So it's just a great opportunity to even get out there, educate, maybe hold some, like, raffles for USARK and stuff. I know you were talking about that, too.
And, yeah, that's something that we lacked this past year, you know, with the whole COVID situation is, like, I mean, I've been doing reptile shows since 2016, and it's a great time, you know, to educate, show somebody, you know, not just a leopard gecko, but, like, all these reptiles in the shows, you know, and we get people in shows that have never seen a reptile. They've never seen a leopard gecko, you know, they think it's the Gecko commercial gecko, you know, like, no, it's different. but it shows are a great way of educating people, and showing them, you know, that these guys can be kept correctly with the right husbandry. I mean, even you go to a reptile show, there's all kinds of, you know, there's specific people, you know, you have your breeders, and then you have, like, your vendors that sell all the husbandry, you know, and they also are very knowledgeable as well, you know, because they want to have the best husbandry for, like, the new reptile you're getting at the shows. But I feel like it missed a lot in this past year to show that it was something that I mean, the whole hobby has been needing, especially in California, because I know there's been other states that have been doing some small shows and stuff like that. But I mean, like, for California, it has been missed a lot, you know, and everybody, like, and I'm pretty sure they're going to get packed in the Del Mar one, you know.
Yeah, dude.
So, I mean, we'll do our best.
Yeah, it's already, like, I think 4,000 people are already, like, bought tickets. So, I mean, that's, it's going to be insane.
And then, for me, like, when I go out there, I mean, it's usually Sam vending with me, you know, Golden Stripe, and we get a ton of people, you know, and, I mean, we can't get through everybody, so you'll have a good amount of people at your table where you're going to be, like, everybody can work with, I know, talking with different people and stuff like that, because it gets a little overwhelming when you get, like, 20 people at your table and you're trying to talk to each one of them, but you can't really.
Yeah. That's why I was like, let me get the Gecko peasants in here. We gotta get this thing rolling. And, like, you know, having other breeders at the table, too, not just helping hands, but other breeders, they'll be able to answer your question. And, like, all of us have kind of the same mindset where the animals come first. So I trust them enough to be able to coach you through something. And, like you said, Expos, like, they have access to buy everything that they need at that exact moment. And with us doing, like, many, like, online sales, we're out of touch with that with our customer. We're not able to walk them through setting up, like, oh, that guy has this over there, you can get that. And even though we keep them in tubs, I'll show you how to set up a glass tank and set it up right, not just like setting it up with like a heat rock and then you run into problems down the road, you know? So, yeah, it's really cool.
Definitely help the community as a whole. And it's also just nice to like get that face-to-face interaction where you're like. Messaging and stuff over Instagram and stuff helps to an extent. YouTube videos help to an extent. But I think when you go to an expo, you're getting a whole nother, like, feel on how to care for an animal. Like, just seeing the animal in person, though, too, like, is just way different than seeing it over a camera or anything like that, over a phone. And it's, I think, expos are just very educational no matter what. Like, the first one that I went to, they had, like, this little setup of, like, tortoises and stuff like that. And I've always been into reptiles, too, and stuff like that. And I walked up. I didn't know as much about tortoises, you know, because I've been doing leopard gecko stuff. But I walk up to them, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is a radiator's tortoise. And I'm like, that they're, like, telling me everything about it. And, like, I had no knowledge about
radiation?
It. No, not radiation. But, like, you just learn so much in that, like, it could be like a falk, and within that 5 minute, like, you could just switch and, like, I want one. I need one now.
Exactly, like you were saying, right? And then it goes back to being, like, you held your first ball python at this show, you know, now you want to have one later on, and if you get that right education, you'll know not to start with the big snake, or same thing with the monitor, you know, you start with the bearded dragon first, and then move your way up.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know.
The hobby isn't as secretive as it used to be. It's not like, I don't know the husband, to be honest. It's like there's really nothing to show for, like, research. Anything, most of everything that you'll see at the show, you Google it, you type in, let's say, crested gecko care sheet, just followed by care sheet, you just have, like, hundreds of thousands of, like, websites going through everything. So it's a lot easier now for people to get on board with it.
And in a way, it's kind of like, not comparing, but, like, let's say you go to, like, a zoo, you know, you see these tortoises, you see these alligators, you know, you want to, when you step in the zoo, you're helping the conservation of the animals that are kept there, you know. Same thing with the reptile shows, you know, where a person goes and learns about this ball python, you know. Now they want to save ball pythons. Obviously, ball pythons is not a species, but, I mean, like, I'm just kind of referring to something like that where, like, what if they have irradiated tortoises, like Ryan was saying, where, like, those are endangered species. They're being poached in Madagascar all the time, you know, and they're endangered. So, I mean, like, when a little kid goes out there and to these reptile shows, because there's more hands on them than, like, a zoo, you can see these animals, and some of them are endangered, and you could be like, well, maybe I want to have one to help the cause, or maybe, like, think of, like, conservation and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's another great way of showing different animals, not just the ones that, I mean, that are really in the big pet trade, but I mean, the ones that, there's some in there that are in danger list and stuff like that.
It's just the impact.
Same thing with like the Abronia, dude. Like, it's really tough to find like reputable people at first, but once you find like your way through everything, it's easy to navigate. But like, especially like shows and like when I bring people over, I like to show them like popped off sick animals that they got like wild caught for that species, and I've gone through, treated it, and like fixed it. But the animal's never going to be the same as like a captive born and bred. So I always bring like at least a couple examples and like show them like, this is CVV. This thing is going to be like twice the size and about half the time because it's been like hand raised by me in captivity.
Yeah.
And now
like,
the house,
Here, I'm gonna pause real quick. So I guess overall, like the bans and the expos, it all kind of correlates back to captive breeding and how that really helps the hobby for one, and people to understand, like, I guess just educating them overall on reptiles. But with the banning out everything, it ruins that experience for people to learn, for people to be educated, and everything's gonna fall into crumbles if you just ban up straight up everything.
Well, and if they're gonna be stripping stuff from like a lot of people that I know, and personally I work with a few endangered and critically endangered species. I work with Abronia as well, but this stuff that's coming in, wild caught, it's really cheap, it's really eye-catching, so people know stuff, and they don't know how to treat it when it comes to ticks, worms, mites, parasites, etc. There's like like fungus that can grow on them too. That's really hard to deal with. And I have inspection sheets. I literally go through and check these animals every single day. And people don't know that. Like, the private sector doesn't know that. Fish and Game doesn't know that. So taking a step forward and making sure we have a steady supply, that these animals aren't going to go extinct in the wild, in a conservative way, breeding these animals and educating maybe government officials, maybe Fish and Game, having like an expo where they can specifically come in, talk to us, pick our brains, get accurate information instead of the vet down the street that only treats cats and dogs and maybe a bird. That's who they're getting their information from, where it's coming from a point of ignorance to where they don't understand what they're talking about. These government officials are sitting behind a desk and telling us what we've done for the past 20 years in domesticating reptiles. They have a say in it when they have never experienced anything in such a way.
And then, David, touching back on what you were saying about treating all these parasites, I mean, and that's where the expert, the one that's knowledgeable, the hobbyist comes in, because they get these wild caught and they treat them, and they treat them and maybe successfully breed them in captivity, and that's where the generations after that, where they're able to offer them to the average people, where they're not going to have those issues with fungus, all those parasites, and in general, like the hobbyist is going to have the resources to them. An average person is not going to take the time or the expense. It's expensive, it's not cheap, it's not like getting a little pill and just giving it to them. It takes time, so that's only done by the hobbyist, the expert, the one that wants to do this, not because of the money situation or anything like that. And at the end of the day, it's worse when illegal imports are coming in sick, and then the hobbyists like ourselves are getting these sick animals that are even worse conditions than they were before because they went into the wrong hands. And that's just making the whole situation even worse, because now that you have to take an extra process, where if you could have gone to the captive way, educating and actually getting the correct healthy animal than just, getting something cheap that looks nice but is filled with parasites.
Yeah, if we're gonna work with the government, if they want to make some laws, let's talk. Let's have that conversation. Let's devise a way where it can benefit all of us and keep animals in proper hands.
And that's what they have to realize, where the hobbyist, the expert, they're the ones that get affected the most, and they don't see that part of of their eyes. You know, like you said, they're sitting behind a desk and they just want to make these laws, but they're not actually looking above that. You know, and even then, fishing games don't help as much.
And that's where like it's good to have like a good relationship with the government and our hobby. And I think that could be like a next step on how we can maybe like stop the bans and look into something more like reliable and something that's actually going to help. And just having that one-on-one, I guess, between a person who's like who's been doing this for years and know what they're doing, and then like the government, rather than listening to Petco or like these little sad animal videos that you see on your TV, listening to those people and hearing like what we have to say and hearing our part of our education. Maybe that's just what we need to do, or like get in touch with these people and invite them to like Expos, for an example.
And that's why it's important to support USARC, you know, because they're the ones behind all of this, you know. Mm-hmm. If we're not supporting them, like I was mentioning early on, like there's pretty much people that don't really care about it, and because their state, their city is not being affected, and that's not the case. You know, we all have to step in, whether it's not our state, whether it's not our city, because at the end of the day, it's affecting the whole reptile community, not just ourselves. Because there might be a customer in Florida that wants a specific gecko, lizard, whatever it is, snake, you know, and we can't send it to them because we can't, because it's illegal now, you know, in Florida. You know, just because it's not our state, it doesn't mean that we're not being affected. But in general, we are being affected, and as a whole reptile community, everybody's being affected.
Yeah.
Not just certain places are having those laws.
Yeah, and I think that's the good spot to end. Where like at the end of the day, it affects everyone, not just one little state, big state, like a small community. At the end of the day, we're one huge community. And with one state banning everything, it's going to like spread like wildfire eventually if people like don't help. So, yeah.
It's going to affect your mama. It's going to affect my mama. It's going to affect everybody's mama.
That's why you support USARC.
Yep.
At least, you know, like, I mean, it's not even expensive. I mean, the bronze is like, you don't even have to be a member. You could just donate $10, you know.
You don't even have to donate. Spread the word. Share the post.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. You know,
like, donate if you can, but times are hard. Like, it's understandable, but do your part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know,
we love these reptiles. Like, let's make sure our kids can have this same excitement and enjoyment that we have.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. You know, like you were saying, that it doesn't have to be money wise either. It's being corrected in a post that somebody's getting, you know, their twist ons. You know, like no, like we have to stand up more with our whole community, not just like we focus with leopard geckos, but I mean the whole community as well. You know.
Yeah.
If you see something wrong, call it out. We got to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for being on the podcast. It's really awesome, and hope you guys learned something from listening to this, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.